My name is Jeff Jorgensen. I'm the president and CEO of Sioux Empire. I have been with this organization since 1990. So I've seen a lot of volunteers and had a lot of opportunity to meet most of you here, and I appreciate the experience and opportunities we've had. This is Chelsea Smith. Chelsea Smith is our Vice President of Operations. Chelsea's been with us since 2010, right?
Yeah.
I won't say the month because
May.
May. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So she's also going to help represent here and do a little conversation. Chelsea has some great experience in the area of risk management too, so I think she has some good experience and some good ability to answer and talk to some of those unique questions that you might have. Chelsea, anything you want to say to start?
We do have a little bit of a sign-up sheet, and you don't need to fill it out right away. We're just going to have you write down your name. If there's any supervisory committee as we get going through everything, supervisory committee interest, go ahead and make a check mark. Board of director interest, or if you're interested in both, please go ahead and indicate that. You can wait till the end to fill this out, but I will just probably set this down. So if at any point in time you think, gosh, I would really like that, go ahead and indicate your interest.
Or even if you just have some follow-up questions about this or anything like that. Don't feel there's no pressure, of course. We just want to make sure that we don't leave you hanging like you had something you wanted us to get back to you. So we want to make sure and do that. Our topic tonight is what might you do to be a volunteer at the credit union? Or what could you do as a volunteer at the credit union? So first of all, I think most importantly is that the credit union even has volunteer opportunities. I think that's probably different. If you go to another financial institution, you can't volunteer. I suppose they'd let you volunteer to clean a parking lot or vacuum or something like that. But as far as being engaged in the financial institution, whether it be at the board level, committee levels, how do you get involved? We just say, you're interested? Great, let's talk about it. Let's do something about it. I'm sure we can use your expertise. That's what we're looking for, is volunteers. Because as a credit union, you own this organization. A little different than you would if, say, if you went to Wells Fargo or U.S. Bank. You might own stock in that organization. A little different though. So this is a quite different opportunity for you.
I think, well, we have a little bit of a PowerPoint, that we'll kind of run through. We'll go through our cooperative principles that you might have seen on the back table, where you maybe grab some snacks. We will walk through kind of the supervisory committee and the board of directors, what both of those, they are split, they are two, committee and board. We will walk through kind of what each one of them is responsible for, what it would look like to be on each one of those boards, and then there are a few videos that we will show you, kind of just wrapping it all together.
We're going to probably assume you know nothing. Okay, so we might insult you if you know something. We apologize for that in advance. Figured we all start down here at the same level than everybody, and again, we apologize if you have some experience, some understanding in advance. That way we can make sure we're all on the same page. We're going to try to use some AV stuff, just some video, because sometimes a picture will speak 1,000 words. There's some great videos. Some are on YouTube, some are from the connections that we have in our organization, so we'll play some of those in general too, but we'll go ahead and start with the PowerPoint just so you can have that as our baseline.
We do have some awesome references that I will, feel free to avail yourself to. You can look through them. This is the Board of Directors handbook. This is kind of asking the right questions. Maybe what would it look like to be a board member? And then this is our supervisory committee handbook. So if you are on any one of those, if you ever serve in that capacity, I'll just kind of pass those around. You can just take a look through those.
Are those online?
No, those are not online. That would be if you were ever served as a member here, volunteer in that capacity, that would be something that you are provided.
And that's one of the things we do have, excuse me, may I introduce Linda Hoyk. Linda Hoyk is one of our current board of director members. Linda is attending here tonight, so it's even better. If you want to talk to somebody live who says, what do you do as a board member? She would be available. I'm throwing her under the bus here a little bit. I would just preface that by saying she's got a sore throat and she's fighting a cold, so she might be a little abrupt in her answers, but it's not personal. It's like, I'm just a little dry, okay? We also have 4 employees in the back room. Some of the attendance here is for educational purposes too. We give credit to our employees to come to educational events like this. But I can also say some of them are interested too. It's like, what do our board members do? What do the committee members do? What is the purpose of this? So it's also of a personal interest. And then my wife is here. She wants to volunteer, but can't, sorry.
What is he doing on those Mondays?
That's right. Colin, could you get that light, please? And we got to hop back and forth here. I apologize for that.
I volunteer because people need a helping hand. I volunteer because I want to secure a future for my children.
Because education is important to me.
Because the American dream still means something.
Because this is where I live.
Where I work. This is my neighborhood.
My city.
My community.
I volunteer because my neighbors, because my co-workers,
Because my friends,
Because my family deserves a financial institution we can trust.
I volunteer at my credit union.
I volunteer at my credit union.
I volunteer at my credit union because I can make a difference.
My credit union is my community.
We didn't pay to have that video created, but it is part of an organization we belong to, and we thought it was very applicable just to kind of give you a little insight into that. Part of it is this, our credit union, we only do business in the community where we live and operate, and that's specifically Sioux Falls and really within a 4-county area, the Sioux Falls MSA. So the county is really where we do our business. This is a community event for you to be associated with the credit union, and it's giving back to your community. The key word, and I hope you got this right away, but I'll just reiterate it, this is volunteering. There's no pay for you in this in any way, and Linda will attest to that consistently. It is illegal for us to pay you. By definition, you're volunteers. Now, we would cover your expenses. There's educational things that you need to do. We do have meetings. The board meetings typically are in the evening. Supervisory committees can be around the noon hour. We work around people's schedules, try and accommodate that. There's lunches or suppers or some meals that you would get, but the basic premise of the whole thing is volunteering for the reason for you're pure and you're doing it for the benefit of the community and the other 11,000 members. There's really, to be honest with you, no personal gain at all for you to do it, other than, it does look good on a resume, right? If you're putting a resume together and you say, what are your volunteer things that you've done? Well, I've been a supervisory committee member at Sioux Empire Federal Credit Union. Really, what does that mean? Been a board member at the Sioux Empire Federal Credit Union. That is an important piece, and giving back to your community can show great things if you're trying to impress a potential employer.
I think the other thing, if you would ask any of the current supervisory committee members or the board of directors, I think that they would also say there's just a little bit of a more ownership stake. They feel a little bit more when they're talking some of those day-to-day issues as a committee. What are we going to do for everyone? How are we going to make sure that what we're doing in policy and procedure is followed? And those committee members, they do get to look at that and they do get to say that. I'm maybe going to speak a little bit for them, but I think that they certainly, take a little bit more ownership in that when they get to be a part of those conversations.
I'll start the slide so we can run through it.
So this actually is the oldest family credit union. It's in Omaha, Nebraska. They operate out of their own individual house. They are called Our Family Social Credit Union. So we just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of, maybe how credit unions started. I know if you have read on our website how Sioux Empire got started, this is very similar. A group of people got together. They happen to all be family members, and they still are all family members. They still operate out of their house. But it's just kind of a neat little video to see, because they walk through, it was part of a 60-minute segment, but they do walk through how they started and kind of the whole premise of credit unions.
It's a great example of volunteer because every person in this family is a volunteer at the credit union. They're volunteer loan officers, they're volunteer supervisory committee, they're volunteer credit committee, and they're volunteer board members. And it's, I think the word unique is used correctly here. It's the only credit union that is truly for the family. And they go into this and it's a very interesting story. And it is about a 4 or 5 minute video, but it is very great. It was on Sunday morning. I think you'll see that in just a second here. Get that lights one more time there, please, Colin. I think I got the volume okay.
Neither a borrower nor a lender be, was the advice Polonius gave his son in William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Advice that's long been ignored by one modern-day American family. With Faith Sailing, we give credit where credit is due.
Omaha, Nebraska, home of billionaire investor Warren Buffett, Omaha Steaks, and epicenter of America's only family credit union, otherwise known as Sue's House.
So this is the world headquarters of our family social credit union? The world headquarters, that sounds really good.
Sue Kane manages our family social credit union from her tiny home office.
Anybody that has a current loan with us, it's right here. Do you remember what that person has a loan out for? Oh, I do. What does this person need money for? They bought a camper and a new car.
These were the descendants that were still alive of Lucy and Mary. This is my grandmother, Maud.
Our family social credit union, or OFSCU as it's called by members, was started in 1950 by the descendants of Manly and Lucy Williams and their spouses.
You always hear this adage about never loan money to friends and family. But it seems like your extended family has been kept close by money. Oh, you're absolutely right.
For a $5 deposit plus a 25-cent handling fee, you become a member of our family social credit union if you are a direct descendant of Manly and Lucy Williams or married to one. Today, OFSCU has 511 members in 22 states and assets of about $500,000.
We're a pretty small meat and potatoes operation.
A small operation that's made a huge difference in the lives of family members over the years, lending money when it's needed for a new car, a new baby, or college costs. And just what is a credit union? And how is it different from a bank?
Banks have shareholders, and they have to make a profit. Credit unions are not-for-profit organizations. And that does not mean that credit unions don't make a profit. It means that their profits are returned to their members.
Peggy Powell runs America's Credit Union Museum on the site of the nation's first credit union, founded in 1908 in Manchester, New Hampshire, to help French-Canadian mill workers who couldn't get bank loans.
Mill workers would come up the hill, come in the front door, sit on the benches in the receiving hall, and wait to do business.
After that, the credit union movement took root across the country, helping men and women save and prosper. The idea of a family credit union, says Peggy Powell, is not so different from that very first one.
It's a group of people combining their resources to look out for one another.
Looking out for one another is a family tradition in Omaha, where our family social credit union is pretty much a volunteer organization.
I want to read to you his lead.
Dave Kane, who's chairman of the board, teaches 6th grade English. Chief Loan Officer Art Peters works construction.
And X times X is X squared.
And Sue teaches middle school math, although she gets a small stipend as credit union manager. If you need a loan, you call Sue.
I get to hear all of the good things that happen when somebody is married, when there's going to be a brand new baby, but you also hear all the rotten stuff. I just lost my job. If somebody is ill, if somebody passes away.
Sue calls Art, who talks it over with his credit committee, cousins Donna and Michelle.
If it's a yes, then I just call Sue and say, yeah, that's approved.
When do you guys ever say no
to anybody.
Oh,
Do you?
unfortunately, we have to.
It's very tough.
There are no late fees. Get a call from Sue.
How can you do that to our family? We were there for you. You need to be there for us and step up to the mark and make your payment.
Off-SKU members have a lot of fun, too. There are reunions every 2 years. Scholarships are given out. There's even a family newsletter called Relatively Speaking.
How do you think having a family credit union has influenced the identity of your family? Well, I think it's kept it very strong. It's the glue that keeps us all together, and knowing each other and caring about each other, and we are family.
A story from Faith Salem.
That's just one of the greatest stories ever. I just love I've seen it like 6 times now, and I just smile and laugh every time I see it.
This is a pretty small operation, but certainly they, operate as a normal credit union. They are bound by certain rules and regulations, just as all of us are. We're going to walk through a little bit of the Federal Credit Union Act. So the Federal Credit Union, the credit union movement began as a cooperative effort, and it was to serve the productive and the provident credit needs of individuals of modest needs. So you heard in there where America's first credit union, started. The mill workers couldn't get loans through the banks, so the credit union started. The Federal Credit Union Act created the federal credit unions in 1934. That Federal Credit Union Act has been the source of authority for all of the federally chartered credit unions, and it does govern it. It says how the coverage and the terms of all of the insured accounts need to be, and that is for federally insured credit unions. All of them. Every federal insured credit union has been started as part of the Federal Credit Union Act, and there are certain guidelines that we have to abide by based on that. The Federal Credit Union Act does also determine the structure and the duties of the National Credit Union Administration, which does happen to be our regulators. They are the ones that will, come in. They make sure that everything internally is working okay. If we ever had an issue, we would go to them and maybe get some guidance on them. But overarching guidance all comes from the Federal Credit Union Act.
2 more things I just remembered we should probably talk about that came out of that Federal Credit Union Act. One is our tax exempt status. Okay? All federal credit unions are exempt from income tax in the United States of America by that act in 1934. Congress passed it, and only Congress can change it. So the state of South Dakota, we have, as a Sioux Empire Federal Credit Union, the state of South Dakota has no control over us in that respect. Now, we follow all the laws of South Dakota, of course, for titling and licensing and UCC codes and all those types of things, but we respond to the federal government and the Federal Credit Union Act. So if the state of South Dakota, now in South Dakota we don't have an income tax. We all know that and we enjoy that. Well, let's say we lived in Minnesota and Minnesota attempted to tax the Sioux Empire Federal Credit Union, it would not be successful because we are an exempt organization by the Federal Credit Union Act of 1934. Okay? It's a wonderful benefit, and they talk about that specifically for that purposes. Along with that, though, they give you the handcuffs, as some people have said, that you have restrictions on who can join your organization. Okay? They don't say it as restrictions, but they say you have to have field of membership eligibility. In other words, if you lived in California and you just heard about the Sioux Empire on the internet, you wanted to call up and join because you thought it had great rates and it was a great opportunity, we have to today, and we did back in 1934, go through a litany of questions to ask you, how can you join our credit union? Part of that is because of our tax exempt status. There has to be a little give and a take, and that's the take, is that we cannot just simply take any single person who comes and knocks on the door and wants to join our credit union. Have to be eligible. Our eligibility to take is those 4 counties that we talked about, the MSA of Sioux Falls, Metropolitan Statistical Area. So those are field of membership eligibility. And there's a couple other caveats, like if family members direct like that, that does extend out to your immediate family members too. So that's also come out from the Federal Credit Union Act. Now, Sioux Empire Federal Credit Union was not started in 1934. We weren't hatched or created until 1938. And an interesting little tidbit, our charter number is 2506. Or is it 2874? I was forgetting. 2874. Which tells you, chronologically, we were the 2,874th credit union that was chartered in the United States. So you can do the math, from 1934 to 1938, and we were in August. So prior to that time, there was 2,873 federal credit unions that were chartered. They were just prolific. They just went crazy because of the demand and the need that people had for credit union services. Thank you.
All right. So we do operate as a financial cooperative. There are 7 cooperative principles that we do operate by that happen to be back there by the cookies that you saw. Principle number 1 is the voluntary and open membership. Principle number 2 is the democratic member control. Principle number 3 is the members' economic participation. Principle number 4 is the autonomy and the independence. Principle 5 is education, training, and information. Principle 6 is cooperation among the cooperatives. And Principle 7 is concern for the community. Sioux Empire does, operate by every single one of those. I mean, if you think about concern for the community, all the volunteers, they're volunteering. They do have a care and concern for what happens at Sioux Empire, which is the entire metro statistical area for Sioux Falls. If you think about some of the further out counties that we have, if you live, work, or worship in Turner County or McCook County, those don't happen to be in Sioux Falls. Those still extend out. Those are still small communities that we have a care and concern for. Even though we live in Sioux Falls, if you're out in that area, you are eligible for membership here. You want to add on all those?
We could spend hours just talking about these principles. But probably one of the things that you need to remember is that most of you probably are familiar with co-ops. There's co-ops all over the country, all over the area, electric co-ops, water co-ops, power co-ops. I mean, there's grain co-ops, there's co-ops all over in South Dakota. Food co-ops here in Sioux Falls specifically too. So we all live by this. The difference for the credit union is we are a financial cooperative, okay? Ag co-ops, power co-ops, water co-ops, food co-ops, financial co-ops. All co-ops attempt to abide by these 7 principles. We all work together, we all try to educate, we all are concerned about our members' economic participation. Annual meetings, we vote and have elections. You have voluntary participation. You're not forced to participate, but you're open for membership too, within the limitations. And there's even a booklet, the organization that we had that video, that gentleman looked familiar. That organization also publishes a way to score yourself as an organization. How well do you do these things? Okay, it's just a self-study. You can just go on through and say, does your website talk about things? Do you advertise your election process? How many members actually vote in your annual meeting? Do you cooperate with your other cooperatives in meetings? How do you show your concern for the community? Just kind of a self-assessment kind of thing. And we do this, and we work on this internally, and so those principles are not just nice things on a screen. Those are things we consider and work with our other cooperatives too.
I even think, the cooperative spirit community in credit unions, we have credit unions, other credit unions in Sioux Falls, maybe even in Mitchell, that have called Jeff or myself and said, hey, how do you guys do this? And unlike the banking world, we'll sit and talk to them and have a conversation. You want to know kind of what procedure we have going on here? This is what we did. Go ahead and feel free to use that. Call us back if you have questions. We all, as cooperatives, work together from every aspect of that, whether it's, how you maybe ran a procedure to the things that we do before and after hours. We are definitely always working together.
You don't find that in the banking community. You don't find that in a investment firm. You don't find that in insurance companies. They don't play well with each other in the sandbox. We get along great. All of the employees in this room could pick up the phone and call their counterparts in any one of the 4 other credit unions in Sioux Falls. First of all, we know them all on a first name basis. We have their direct phone numbers, ask them any question in the world, and it would go both ways. Anytime they have anything they need from us, boom, we got it. It's just the way that cooperative principle actually is demonstrated in live and in action.
So we put together a little bit of a flow chart for some of our volunteer committees and our board. Our board of directors, they are elected by the members. So there is an annual meeting. We go through and elect them. They do serve for a specified amount of terms. So it's not every year we go through and we say, yeah, we think that Linda would be great to sit on our board. They do serve for a certain number of terms. So they are elected by the members. Offshoots of that board of directors, there are other committees that they might serve on. So there's an asset liability or the rate committee. There's a personnel committee, a building committee, and the advisory committee is something that we're kind of looking at putting together. It does not currently exist. From there is then the supervisory committee, and they are appointed by the board of directors. Their meetings are typically during the day. Board of directors are, once a month in the evenings. And then there's a credit committee that is not currently used by Sioux Empire. We used to have that, and I don't even know how long ago.
It's probably about 8 years ago. We disbanded it. It's not a requirement for credit unions. You saw in that commercial on that video about our family credit union has a credit committee. It's not uncommon. I would say probably less than 50% of credit unions in the country now use the credit committee, but it's still not uncommon to see it.
We've just chosen here at Sioux Empire not to have a credit committee. We give some of our loan officers a little bit more autonomy than if they would have to run everything through a credit committee. But that's kind of how the flow chart works for our volunteers.
Now, I would encourage you, you're here because you want to know about a volunteer position in the credit union, or what might you do as a credit union member. How would you volunteer? So this is not an opportunity for you because we don't use it. So this is an opportunity for you as a board member. You could get elected to this position. Then if you were on this position, you could be assigned to one of these 3 committees. Okay, so you can't come to me tonight and say, I want to be a member of this committee. Well, you got to get on the board first, and then this is a subcommittee of that, correct? Also, tonight if you leave here and you say, well, I'm interested in the supervisory committee, and you hear a little bit about what they do momentarily here, that's great. We would take that information. We would go to the board of directors and say, we have 5 candidates who are interested in being involved with the supervisory committee. Let's talk to them, what their expectations, how they can do that. Then would they be eligible to be appointed by the board of directors in this role? Actually, it's a little faster than going to become a board member because this only occurs annually. It's election only when there is vacancies in this position. The supervisory committee is pretty much, we can appoint you to that position whenever the board meets, which is monthly. Okay. The other opportunity, though, I do want to draw a little more attention to is the advisory committee. And as Chelsea indicated, we don't have a formal advisory committee today, but we're going to start one. Okay. Part of this is to be honest with you, it's an opportunity for a person to get some flavor into this without the commitment or the hassles or the liabilities, whatever you might want to say. I just want to be involved, take a look, kind of feel, see what it might be. What we would do with this information is we would have you offer advice to these organizations, maybe some recommendations, some more feedback from our membership. Some people might call it like a focus group kind of thing, just an opportunity to have more feedback from our membership. Of course, you could also envision that this could be a feeder for some of these positions. So if a person retires from the board of directors or somebody steps down from the supervisory committee, if one of these persons on this committee has expressed interest in those and there's just not an opening right now, let's say, the first person we're gonna turn to is persons on this committee, because they've already expressed an interest, they've already been involved, they understand the process, and they've shown the willingness and the desire to be a part of it. So, I don't know on the sign-up sheet if there was indication. No, there is no indication of what you mean, okay?
So we'll delve a little bit more into the supervisory committee and the board of directors. The supervisory committee, they are unique only to credit unions. In the other financial institutions such as a bank, they do not have a supervisory committee. That is unique only to credit unions. They are made up of all volunteer members. As Jeff indicated before, we cannot pay them anything. They do this out of the kindness of their own heart and that they like to be involved. Those members are appointed by the board of directors. That does not take place on, let's say, an annual basis. The committee does consist currently of 5 members. The least that they can have is 3. If that were something, they expand the committee, maybe a few people step down, the committee would then go to the board and say, hey, these few persons are interested in being involved. That could maybe take place on a monthly basis, and the board of directors would then appoint in those vacancies any member to fill those 2 or 3 spots, however many there would happen to be. The supervisory committee is dubbed the watchdog of the credit union. That is a regulatory, it's in their supervisory committee handbook. That is kind of the nickname that they give the supervisory committee. Uniquely, the supervisory committee does carry a little bit of power. They can, if anything, they ever wanted to, they could suspend one or all members of the board. Now they can't go in there and do that for fun, but if there were ever anything that they maybe had some concern about, that is a power that the supervisory committee does carry, that they can suspend one or all members of the board. And they are responsible for the annual external CPA audit. We are required to have a external CPA audit every year. The supervisory committee goes through, they send out requests for financial proposals. They kind of go through those, see who would be qualified to give Sioux Empire an annual audit. They do that for an extended period of time. Right now, I think our term is 3 years. And then the CPA, they kind of set all that up whenever they come in during the year. The CPAs work all of that out with the supervisory committee. So the ownership equity, all credit unions, because we are a member-owned financial cooperative, there is a big piece of ownership equity that you have, all 11,000 members have in every single one of our branches in Sioux Empire as a whole. There is a really great video that we kind of placed up here in regards to ownership equity.
It's a little more cheesy or commercially probably than the other ones you've seen, but it is still pretty interesting. If I can find it here. All right, maybe I didn't have it loaded, I apologize. Thought I did. I'll find it very quickly though, don't worry. Or so I thought. There we go.
Whenever you want technology to work, it does not.
But now I'd like to talk about something that we really can't ignore any longer. For some reason, for some inexplicable reason, no matter how many times I say it's a fad, credit unions just won't go away.
Yeah, and credit union membership is growing every day. That's right, folks. More people are making a change in the way they bank. And it's not at a bank at all. If you're a member of a credit union, you see your membership value increase every time a new member joins. You see the value increase every time members use their credit union services and products. Your membership value increases every time a member is approved for a loan. Every time members discuss their credit union's direction and vote in credit union elections. It increases every time a new branch opens. And credit unions increase value in their communities. Members' value increase every time a credit union sponsors or supports the community they're a part of. And who sees this benefit? How do you get on this positive trend? Who owns these credit unions? That is the most mind-blowing part, folks. Become a member. The members are the owners. Is that right? As a member of a credit union, you own the credit union. That's right, folks. You heard it here. Join a credit union.
Members are owners. Owners are members. That's how it works.
What's this?
Our credit union dividend check.
Well, didn't realize when we first joined our credit union, it's the best investment we've made. Sure we paid off.
So as you can see by that, there is a lot of stake in having a membership here. Whether it's lower rates, they pay, we pay higher dividend rates for any of your deposit products. You do get a say every year at the annual meeting. You get to cast a vote. There are just a lot of great things that go into being a credit union member. So let's talk a little bit about the board of directors. Again, just like the supervisory committee, they consist of all volunteers. There currently are 7 persons that sit on the board of directors. Legally, they can only have a minimum of 5. There can be a maximum of 15 board members. There are currently 7. They are covered under bond insurance when they act within their fiduciary duty. So when they act as based on their, that board of directors kind of says, the things that they need to do, things they need to watch out for as a board member, the way that they conduct themselves within their board responsibility. When they do that, they're covered under bond insurance. If anything were to ever happen, the credit union would ever be sued. The board of directors are nominated by either a nominating committee or by petition. If it's by petition, it is signed by at least 1% of the credit union membership. Like Jeff mentioned, we change board of directors, or the opportunity to change board of directors happens on an annual basis. That is at the annual meeting, typically June.
Correct.
One thing that the board of directors does have as a requirement is they need to be financially literate. In January of 2011, there was a national requirement from the NCUA that says all board of directors, for all credit union directors, they have got to be financially literate and go through some training to kind of prove their literacy. So the financial literacy requirement does require that all federal credit union directors have to have the ability to read and understand the credit union's balance sheet and their income statement, so that when acting as a board member, they can ask appropriate, substantive questions of the management and the internal and external auditors. The board of directors are part of that CPA external audit. They do have the opportunity to ask some of those questions. When you become a board member, there's a 6-month time frame for compliance with that financial literacy provision. So from the annual meeting, if that were to be something the board changed, members of the board changed, they would have 6 months to have gone through the certification to be considered financially literate to serve in capacity as a board member. The NCUA does a really great job of conducting training. There's a certification out there that they have. They provide a lot of resource for our board members, and all of our board members had to go through that training series, and that was done by NCUA.
There is another site that is available for financial literacy too. There's a quick video that explains some of that and why financial literacy is important. One of the things that I think maybe was kind of thrown stones at credit unions over the years, and bankers were ones that like to throw those stones at us, is that they would think of like our family credit union as just those little hicks that have no idea what they're doing. Right? They have no idea how they're doing this. This is way beyond their ability to run a financial institution. They just don't understand the complexities of it. And so NCUA had to come up with this plan to prove financial literacy. The board members have to prove that they understand the intricacies of reading a financial statement. They understand the terminology. We had to be able to prove, and a lot of this becomes political because we were dealing with Congress and taxpayers. People want to know, do you really know what you're doing in this capacity? And so the financial literacy piece is big. NCUA, again, is our federal regulator, so they have a vested interest in the maintaining of the credit union charter. Because guess what? If the credit union charter goes away, we disappear, what do you think would happen to this federal regulatory body? It's going to disappear too. Because if they have nobody to regulate over here, they're out of a job. So when these things do get passed, a lot of times they provide us the opportunities for the training, and this is just a document that would highlight that. But there's also another piece that we use, and we've used this on the board of directors level, and Linda can speak because she's worked through this series too, financial literacy, and it's a great introduction about this and why it's important. You'll see, I think, a pretty good little vignette piece also.
Hi, I'm Randy Carnes, the CEO of CU Answers. We believe that financial literacy is more than just book learning. It comes from the interaction board members have with each other and their credit union teams. It comes with the confidence you gain from experience, education, and the perseverance as a volunteer. This series is intended to either start you on that journey or to confirm where you are as a competent, experienced credit union volunteer. The average volunteer spends less than 50 hours a year as a board member, so every hour is precious. A credit union CEO needs to respect that. That's why we've designed the series to be very straightforward. It's an open book test. It's short enough so it can be group processed during your regular board meetings. Why would our CUSO invest in a series like this? Why would we offer it to the market for free? It's simple. Without confident and dedicated volunteers, our industry ceases to exist. Nothing could be more valuable to our industry and the careers of every credit union professional than contributing to the success and ongoing value that credit union volunteers represent. We hope that your team will benefit from this series.
Welcome to our education series on financial literacy for credit union board directors. My name is Laura Welch-Bilker, Manager of Education Services at CU Answers. Before we begin, I would like to explain the flow of each class in the series and introduce you to our panel of experts. Each class has 3 sections. We'll begin with a presentation by our panel, followed by a summary of the terms or ideas in the presentation, then conclude with a test and answers. Remember that the tests are not designed to be a comprehensive list of everything you need to know as a board director, but they will help reinforce things you already know and give ideas for new things to add to your board discussions. And maybe you'll learn something new. Our panel consists of 4 individuals, each unique in their experience with the credit union industry. Randy Carnes, a CUSO CEO who serves on the board of several organizations and also teams with his own board to meet ongoing business challenges. Bob Frizzle, a CUSO CFO who works with multiple boards as CFO and also serves as a board director for several businesses. Jim Vilker, a business leader with the NAPQ Certified Compliance Officer certification and experience as an examiner. Patrick Sickles, a licensed and certified information systems auditor who interacts daily with CUSO business leaders and the CUSO board on what they need to be thinking about when it comes to risk and designing good internal audits.
So that financial literacy training that the board went through, as Jeff mentioned, it's kind of to help maybe facilitate some more questions, give the board a few additional things to think about when they are thinking as a board member in regard to the balance sheet, the income statement, kind of the whole gamut of things that Sue Empire would have to go through and as a board member, then they get to speak to.
To be honest with you, when this regulation was passed, it was a big stink. Oh my gosh, the credit unions just blow up over this. That our federal regulator would come in and tell us that we don't know what we're doing, or that we have to prove that we know what we're doing, right? I have to take a test to prove to you I know how to read a stupid financial statement. I have to take a test to tell you I know what I see every single month. I have to take a test. This lit up the credit union community. And I know there were some concerns that new persons would be afraid to volunteer based on these things, okay? I'm not a college graduate, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, thinking that maybe that bar was going to be raised so high that the recruitment for new volunteers was going to be insurmountable. It's just like, we're just never going to get volunteers because it's so tough to pass all this. I mean, this is a pretty ugly statement, isn't it? I mean, if I read this, like, hey, that's ugly. But what these organizations tried to do is to show you, and this is why we played a little more of this clip than you maybe wondering, why would they play this clip? It's not hard, okay? Don't let this become a hurdle that you can't get over. If you're interested in being a volunteer in the board capacity, we can get you over this. It's an open book test, it's not difficult. It really is a great primer for you to be a board member because they cover a lot of the topics that you would be using, or the acronyms. Our industry is just rife with acronyms. It's embarrassing sometimes, it really is. And I'm sure the businesses you've all been in and you just read it in the paper, ours has got them too. So some of it is just simply learning. What does GAP stand for? What is NCUA? What is CUNA? What is QSO? All these wonderful little acronyms. So that'll help you get through that too, right, Linda? She's smirking, but it's like, oh my gosh, acronyms galore.
Excuse me, but I do see it that it's required. I mean, how could you, I wouldn't want to volunteer for something that I don't have hand over it, and I don't know how to do it. Like, for example, a nurse who wants to be volunteer, if she cannot do the job of nursing, how can you be volunteer?
That seems very
So
valid.
this makes sense.
Yeah, we have not had any problems with our 7 board members passing or qualifying the financial literacy piece. We've had new board members who've come on in this capacity, never has been an issue. So for us, we were not concerned about it. But again, think about, say, like our family credit union in Omaha. They really have a somewhat limited pool of talent for persons in the volunteer capacity. They're not going to go out and recruit CPAs. They're not going to go out and recruit attorneys. Their family tree is fairly limited, 511 people. Now maybe they have some of those persons in that organization, in their family tree, but it's different. Now we have approximately 10 or 11,000 members, and we have approximately 250,000 eligible members. So if we really needed it, and part of it I think is kind of a slippery slope, is what the credit unions are concerned about. If the regulator comes out and says, okay, we're going to tell you have to do this. Well, what's the next thing they're going to tell you that we have to do? That we do have to have a college degree, or you have to have a lawyer on your board, you have to have these types of things. So that's part of the concern, is that when your regulator starts coming in the back door of your organization, where do they stop? This was a very low hurdle for most people to get over. I'd say 99% it was a non-issue, if they keep it there. As long as they don't raise at the bar, wouldn't it be terrible if they did say, I'm sorry, you now have to say, you have to prove a net worth of $350,000 in order to be a board member. You have to prove that you have a 4-year college degree and or a master's equivalent and or. That would be horrific. So we're cautious about those kind of things.
And I think that's where, the people that have helped put some of that financial literacy training together, they understand some of those requirements. So they've been able to speak to a very basic level of what is a balance sheet, what would be the really key things that I want to look at, what would maybe be some questions I want to ask, and they go through a lot of those acronyms that Jeff mentioned. I mean, they understand the things that the regulators would be looking for. So it's helped combat some of that training requirement as well. Here's just a couple things that if you were ever to serve in the volunteer capacity here at Sioux Empire, we would fairly want you to consider. The time commitment, there are monthly meetings and board training. Usually the last Monday of the month, the board has a meeting that is after hours. It is held here at the credit union, but that would be a required monthly meeting that you attend. The financial literacy training, the annual planning session, we do that on the weekends. Some of the management team is a part of that as well, but all of the board of directors are there and they're present. It's usually a Saturday, sometimes a Friday night into Saturday. And basically what we do is we map out the next year, maybe a little longer than a year, kind of for the credit union. Where do we want to go? What are the things we want to consider? What, as a management team, how are we going to help drive that? And the board is definitely a part of that. They have a hand in all of that planning session. There is a conflict of interest policy that they are required to sign. Anyone wants to see that, we do have a copy. And then if you are a board member and you happen to have a loan request that is greater than $20,000, that would need to be reviewed by the rest of the board. As a normal member, that would go through just our regular loan officers. If you served in the volunteer capacity as a board, supervisory committee as well, those loan requests are reviewed by the board of directors.
Very true. The loan request requirement is not something that our board has adopted, the Sioux Empire has adopted personally. That is a regulation of every federal credit union in the United States. Now we as credit unions have been lobbying to our NCUA, our regulator, that it's been $20,000 for about 30 years. Okay, it's a ridiculous number. So that means if you have a car loan for $20,000, or let's say $19,000, you come, if it's $20,000 or less, it just goes through our normal loan approval process. It's done, piece of cake. You come back in a week later and you say, oh, I'd like to get a $2,000 credit line on my credit card because I'm going to take a vacation. I forgot to do that. Guess what? You're over the $20,000. It's not per loan request. It's for your total indebtedness to the credit union. And so let's say that the next time that the board meets is 3 weeks and 7 days later or 6 days later because you just got a previous loan approved or the timing is such, you have to wait to take your loan request for your credit card to the board at the next board meeting. I mean, so that can be just a hassle, okay? It's really what it becomes. It's a little hassle. So we always tell people, we appreciate the volunteer, we appreciate that you do your financial business with the credit union, but we want to be upfront with you and say, getting a loan is actually a little harder if you're a volunteer. Now, also with that being said, we have to just be right up front and tell you, when the examiners and the CPAs come in and they test our credit union to make sure we're doing things right, who do you think the very first loan files they pull? Yours and mine. Because we're considered insiders, okay? They want to make sure that the decisions that the board made is not self-serving. Okay, yeah, Jeff wants that loan for $50,000, but I'll take $20,000. Okay, yeah, well, he was a good guy. Those types of decisions can't happen. Okay, so they will pull the insiders' loans, and then they pull our employee loans immediately. And you all as volunteers in every one of those positions that you saw, board member, supervisory, credit committee, all those other committees, you are considered an insider, so your loans get immediate review. Now again, we've been doing this, 76 years now our credit union has been in existence. We've never had a problem with any of that, but we just want to be upfront with all the volunteers and tell them that situation does exist. There's also some other time commitments that we don't have on here. Chelsea did talk about the monthly meetings. That can be anywhere from an hour to 2 hours a month. Board training. That's the kind of thing that's really hard to get your arms around. Okay, we're part of a couple different organizations, associations or leagues or opportunities for you to go have some social events, go to some education things that would be applicable for your job description here as a board member, as a supervisory committee member. we can't pay you for that. Coming back to this volunteer thing, keeps coming back to volunteer thing. A lot of those events occur Monday through Friday. Okay, so you may have to take time off of work. We will pay for your travel, we will pay for your lodging, and we will pay for your food and your conference registration for those types of things. But we cannot reimburse you for lost wages, or if you have to take vacation or PTO or whatever the case may be. That's your volunteer contribution to that. So let's say one of the organizations that we're involved with in North and South Dakota, they're having their annual meeting this year in Sioux Falls. Happens to be the first couple days of June. It's on a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Great opportunity, first of all, for you to mix and mingle with persons in your exact position in credit unions, so you can kind of get to know some other persons. Great educational opportunities, and just a great chance to see some of the vendors that we do business with too. We pay, so it wouldn't cost you a hard dollar out of your pocket. We pay for all those registrations and your food's included. You don't have any travel time because it's in Sioux Falls, but it's on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in the middle of a work week. So those are the things that might come into play in your consideration on that. Required financial literacy training, you may choose to do that on your own. You saw how some of those are on the internet. We can give you a DVD. You can do that at home, sitting at your computer at home. Annual planning session theoretically could be 4 to 10 hours, depending on how long it goes. You heard Rainey in the previous video talk about the average board member spends less than 50 hours a year involved in this. That's average, but I don't want to downplay any of it either, okay? I want you to make sure you understand. And the conflict of interest is very simple. When you walk in the boardroom, you got your board hat on. You're a board member. You can't think about, oh, well, we need to build that branch, and I own that piece of property right next to the branch that we're looking at. If we bought it, that would help my value. No. You can't think personally like that. You can't make the decision to say, I need a boat loan next month. I'm going to make a motion that we lower the loan rates on boat loans. Okay? That would be a conflict of interest. So you can't be self-serving in this. And I know it seems funny or humorous or just ludicrous, but those are the types of things that can create conflict of interest. Oh, geez, that was just a section ahead, wasn't I?
So here are just some resources that we have for our volunteers. CUNA is the Credit Union National Association. We just kind of posted a link there. There are some training opportunities for volunteers for board members. NCUA happens to be our regulator, National Credit Union Administration. Every one of these organizations has a load of information, great resources, training tools. If you ever wanted this, certainly let us know. We would be more than happy to provide that for you. NAFCU is the National Association of Federal Credit Unions. Again, there is a link that we have placed up there. They have resources for volunteers for training, just like QAD. That is an association, the Credit Union Association of the Dakotas, that we belong to. As Sioux Empire Federal Credit Union, they are also the ones that Jeff was just talking about, have the annual Summit League is what they call that, coming here in June. They do provide a lot of additional trainings, kind of social hours. You get to mix and mingle with other credit union personnel, some of the vendors that we utilize as a Sioux Empire Federal Credit Union. And that is all.
Pretty good. It's 7:01. How's that for pretty good timing? You told you 1 hour?
If you have any questions for any one of us, Linda, Jeff, myself, we would be more than happy to answer those questions, visit with you. If there is any interest, please do not forget to sign your name and indicate whether you are supervisory committee, board, you have interest in that, or even the advisory council like Jeff had mentioned. We certainly want to keep your name in the mix of interested persons if a volunteer position ever were to come present itself here at the credit union. And then if you have any other outstanding questions for us, just please let us know. We'd be more than happy to discuss any of that with you.
And if you want the presentation, just give us your email address and we can shoot it out to you. You can review those, go to those links and look at them. all those tabs that we saw before for AFQ and QAD, you can take a look at those. I'm gonna put Linda on the spot. Is there anything that you'd like to speak to the group as our resident board member present?
It's a challenging experience, but it's fun. You'll learn a lot. You get a chance to gel as a board and make decisions that impact a lot of people. But you get that's helping. It's great. You'll love it. I can't speak to supervisory because I've never been there, so.
We do have a very, very strong board. We're probably one of the organizations in South Dakota and great board of directors. We have a great representation across many different employers, many different skills. So the opportunity to work here, volunteer here, is direct and simple and easy. Because the things that you do in this boardroom, to be really blunt, doesn't benefit yourself directly. It does indirectly. Okay. Like when we decide to open a new branch, yeah, you do get benefit because you're going to use it personally. But you do not make more money yourself on your tax return because we opened a branch. You don't have a financial gain because you were involved in that sale of the property. In fact, you have to recuse yourself if there's any potential conflict of interest in that situation. It's a significant difference in why you do these types of things and how you can benefit. When Linda sits in the boardroom, she makes a decision, I vote this way on a topic. It's not how is Linda going to benefit, but how do the organization benefit? How do the members benefit? Will this be the right decision for our credit union? Not how the stock value is going to be influenced. How are the shareholders going to be concerned about their return? Is that going to affect our dividend? How does that work? And okay, what's our capital gains? Again, we don't have any tax consequences. Is it a good business decision? Will the members use it? Can we afford to do it? Let's do it. Even if Linda would never use it in 100 years.
You can't wear your own hat. You have to wear the hat looking for everybody else's interests. It's not.
It's a very great system, and it makes a lot of sense, and it really kind of keeps the organization going in the right direction. Is there any questions that you still have that you care to ask in a group setting? Of course, we would be more than happy to discuss them individually with you, or even another time or date or whatever.
How often do you get turnover on the supervisory committee or the board?
The board has little turnover. I will never say never. Most board positions are 3-year terms. So we have 7 board members. We try to do 3, 2, and 2. So the rotation, you don't want to have 7 and 0.
Okay.
So at the most, there's ever 2 positions that are available. This year, there happen to be 3 positions available. Most of the time, and I can't think, again, I've been here since 1990, if we've had more than one election, a true election at the annual meeting, and that would occur only if there's more candidates than there are open positions. Okay. The duty of the nominating committee is to put up for nomination an equal number of candidates, a minimum, that there are positions open. So again, right now this year there are 3 sitting board members whose terms are expiring in 2014. The nominating committee visited with each one of those 3 and said, are you willing or do you desire to continue in this capacity as a volunteer board member? All 3 of them said yes. So the incumbents will be nominated to continue in this role. Now, it's not to say that if you are interested in the board position that you could not contact the nominating committee, and they have a phone number and their contact of board members to ask for your name to be placed in nomination. And if for some reason they would not, the other process that you saw here earlier is called nomination by petition, where we have an actual petition, kind of like if you went down to the courthouse, but you would get members like that, 1% of the members of Sioux Empire to sign to say, yeah, I'd vote for you, or not really vote, I would be supportive of you being a candidate. Okay, so there's a couple different ways to be involved in that capacity. But I would say, you know, again, I've been involved in the board or in the credit union since 1990. We have probably had, well, Chelsea showed you a slide that said that you can have a maximum of 15 board members. We did at one time have 15 board members. And that was in the year 2000 when there were 2 credit unions that merged. the VA Federal Credit Union and the Sioux Empire Federal Credit Union. Those two organizations merged, and so we took both of those boards of directors, smushed them together, and said, okay, now we have 15 board members. And then over time, as those board members' terms expired and or they resigned, through attrition, we brought that number back to where we wanted it to be in a comfortable, workable number, where we believe is 7. Most credit union boards probably have 7 to 9. I know one that has 11, I know one that has 5, but the sweet spot seems to be 7 to 9 is the workable number. And that's why we say, even if there isn't a position today that would be something you'd be wanting to run into, get your name involved in the advisory committee, get involved with that, kind of just test the water, learn what it's about, see how the interaction is, and if you would be a candidate, because people do retire, people do resign, people move out of town. We did have one member who was on the board, worked at the VA hospital, took a transfer within the VA system and moved to North Carolina, I believe is where he moved to, created a vacancy. If the vacancy for the positions occurred mid-term, you remember you're elected for a 3-year term, so if the vacancies occur within that 3-year terms, the responsibility to fulfill that unexpired term falls on the other seating board members. Okay, so the other 6 then appoint you to that unexpired term to fulfill that, and you run for a full term election at the next annual meeting. So that's why we really constantly need a pretty good flow of persons who might be willing to do it. Now, we hopefully have a pretty good lead time if somebody's going to quit or retire or resign or move. It's not just, I'm gone tomorrow. But we like to have a pool of people that we can say, hey, opportunity here, you still interested? And again, sometimes they come from the supervisory committee. Supervisory committees are a group of people who are used to volunteering, understanding the acronyms, you understand the flow. So sometimes the board will say this, and I shouldn't say it in an institution, but rob from the supervisory committee to say, are you willing to move over to the board of directors in this capacity instead of the committee capacity? They're different. There's quite a bit of difference in those two organizations. Any other questions? Okay. I will call it good. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attendance today, especially on a beautiful evening.